This is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the first episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast with Hambone and Stu. A year ago, Stu created the Vintage RPG Instagram to show off the history of some of his favorite books, toys, and games. Now, spinning out of that Instagram is this podcast where we're also going to highlight the games we're playing, the games we're excited for, and a deep dive into the history of classic RPGs. With me, as always, is Stu Horvath. So this is the first episode, and I think it's only fitting that we kick it off by talking about the games that we're playing. So, Stu,
let's do it.
What you playing?
We just cracked into the Star Wars Rebellion game.
Ooh, how is that? Oh, don't say that. So, the thing is, every time I go into a game store or into Barnes & Noble's looking for a book, I always see the box. And I know it's like $100, right?
Yeah, I think it's like 120.
Oh, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, do I $100 want this game? So I've been secretly trying to plant seeds in all the brains of my friends to get them to buy it instead. So who bought it?
Well, nobody, actually. Our friend Ed, his family, he did that to his family. He made them buy it for him for Christmas.
Wow, so you're saying the seed I planted in Ed, he planted into his family, and then they eventually bought the game for him.
They did. It was well done.
All right, so you groaned when I mentioned it. Why don't you tell me about why is it groan-worthy?
Okay, so first off, it has so many little miniatures and plastic pieces, and the galaxy map is cool, and all of that, the bits and bobs are awesome.
Because we love bits and bobs.
There's multiple Death Stars.
Really?
Yeah. You can have up to 2, and then they have the Return of the Jedi, in construction one for when you're building yours. So it's neat. The problem is that it's an asymmetrical game. One player plays the Rebels, one player plays the Empire, right?
Right.
And you can have it so that 2 players can play the Empire versus 1 player or 2 player Rebels.
Okay.
The Empire is trying to find the hidden rebel base, which, okay, that sounds cool, right?
Of course.
But the problem is, and now granted, we only played it once. It was very long.
Well, it's a Fantasy Flight game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's all you had to say.
But in terms of Fantasy Flight, there's not a lot of, it's not like Arkham Horror where there's a whole bunch of tokens to manage.
Right.
It is a pretty narrowly focused game. But when me and Ken were the Empire, our friend Ken, and Ed was the Rebellion, when we found the Rebel base, when we deduced where the Rebel base was,
right,
it was, we knew where it was, and there was nothing that Ed could do to stop us. But there was also 5 rounds it was going to take before we got our fleet there to destroy him.
Oh, so it's a slow death.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even a slow death. We all just saw the writing on the wall. We're just like, well, the Empire won.
Okay.
Contrast that with a game like Scythe, where you're in it you don't know who's going to win until the very end. And you get penalized if you try and figure it out. And there's all those moving pieces, and it's constantly engaging you and distracting you in different ways. And that's not Star Wars Rebellion. So far, one play, so it wasn't the full rules, and maybe we played it wrong.
I've often played a lot of games wrong, especially growing up. Because, one of the games that I'm actually playing this week, I'm playing Golden Girls Clue.
All right.
Now, Clue is my favorite game of all time. So in any shape or form, I'm always down to play some Clue. Now, this game is no different. It is your classic Clue game with a twist. Instead of being in a mansion looking for Mr. Potty, you are at the Golden Girls' house trying to figure out who ate this last slice of cheesecake. And it sounds ridiculous. And there are a lot of different versions of Clue out there. Clue is really tapping into a lot of different intellectual properties as of late. They did a Star Wars one where you can actually build a pop-up Death Star.
Neat.
A Harry Potter one where you have the Flu Network, which was pretty cool. The Golden Girls one, the twist on this, and I love this, the twist on this is that you have cards that you can draw. They're distraction cards, and they're men. And if you get 8 men, you just get so flustered and you're out of the game. It is one of the best Clue games, one of the best versions of the game Clue that I've ever seen. And the weapons are like, you have a lipstick, you have a purse, a lanai chair. Am I saying that right? Lanai chair?
I don't know.
Lanai chair?
What is that?
I don't know. You know how I'm bad at pronouncing things.
Well, I know that. We have a segment about it, but I don't even know what that is.
I think it's like a wicker chair. I don't know. It's outdoor furniture. Either way, it's one of the weapons. You play all 4 Golden Girls, and the extra 2 characters are Stan and I forget the other guy's name.
I'm going to be zero help to you here.
I know
have no
you
idea.
are. Well, either way, it's the two suitors that made it the furthest in the Golden Girls. So it's actually a great game. USAopoly puts it out, and they've been putting out a lot of great licensed games lately, and I highly, highly recommend it if you love Clue.
Right on. But wait, just bringing you back in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I knew I was going to talk about Clue. I got excited.
But I mean, we were talking. We got to Clue by talking about playing games wrong.
Right. So that was the thing. Up until a few years back, when I went to a party and we were going to play some board games, and it wasn't like King of Tokyo board games. It was actually board games. So I saw the instructions for Clue, and as we're about to play, everyone kind of had an idea on how to play. So I said, "All right, hold on a second. Let me read these instructions."
It kind of exists in your brain as like this platonic ideal of Clue, right?
It does, but it's not real.
It's not real.
It's not real. So I learned how to play Clue the right way, and it's even more fun when you play it the right way. So are you thinking that when you crack open Rebellion, you get down to the nitty-gritty of the instructions, it might be a little more enjoyable?
I really hope so, but I think that the barrier to entry is that it's a long game and it's only a 4-player game max. So I don't know how much time it's really going to get with a regular board game crew.
Right, which is, again, you brought up Scythe.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
That you are right saying that right.
Yeah, so that game is up to 6 players, correct?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I think it is expanded to 6.
It's expanded to 6, and there's a lot more nuance to a game like Scythe where you're constantly building to try to overtake the land.
Yeah.
So
and there's just so many machines. Like, you're building all these little machines to do things, and it's all about what you're doing and less about trying to get the other guy. You know, you're focused on your own machine.
Right.
I don't know. It just, like, Scythe is just so much more satisfying. It's deeper. It's something.
Right. Well, we'll have to get back to our listeners on that. We are going to deep dive into the directions, read them properly, or we'll get like one of our friends to do it, because I'll be realistic, I'm not going to be the one to do it. So we'll get one of our friends to really read the instructions, and we will get deep into Star Wars Rebellion for Fantasy Flight Games.
Right on.
So Stu, why don't you tell me a little bit about Vintage RPG's Instagram? Now, what made you want to start an Instagram it's kind of like a boutique Instagram?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're in the clubhouse where the collection is stored. You know, I had to share it.
Now, for those listening at home, there is a clubhouse at a very, very hidden remote location, which is filled with old RPG games, books, toys, artwork, strange masks, and maybe a portal to another dimension, although I've not found it yet.
Well, we keep that pretty well hidden.
Especially because I drink a lot, so you don't want me to fall down in there. And
we'll never see you again.
You'll never see me again. And
I don't have a co-host. Oh, no.
And what I would see, it would scare me.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So you decided that you had all this great stuff and you wanted to share it with the world.
Yeah, I kind of got the collector bug, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and all of a sudden, you know, I was able to score a lot of stuff cheap. And once I scored all of this stuff cheap, it was like I needed to share it. I was just like I wanted to talk about it constantly because I have all of this stuff.
Right. I mean, you've always had a pretty hardy collection ever since I've known you with D&D books. You went on a good pulp bender a few years back buying pulp books, right?
Yeah, I still do that on occasion too. Yeah. I collect things and then I try and sell them off because I don't have that much room in my house.
And that's why he built the clubhouse.
Yes.
It's not so much a fun place where we play games, it's extra storage.
Yeah, the playing games here is just a bonus.
So, of all the things that you could have started with, why the Monster Manual 2?
So Monster Manual 2 was, there's a little bit of memory. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 90% sure that Monster Manual 2 was the first D&D book that I owned, was bought for me.
About what year do you think that was?
85 or 86. I was youngin'.
Oh, yeah. Now, did you get it at an actual game store? Or, you know, for me, a lot of the older D&D books I got, and this was a shock to me. I would buy them from old collectors, from dudes who were moving, and a lot of them would have like Toys R Us or KB Toy stickers on them. And I was like, well, you could get these at Toys R Us?
I actually don't remember ever actually seeing them in Toys R Us or KB. All of my early stuff came from a little local bookstore newsstand called Daniel's Den. This skinny old hippie ran it, and he had like, you know, the Satanic Bible and Dungeons and Dragons books and comic books, and that was the stuff that attracted my attention.
So what shelf was the Satanic Bible on?
Oh, that was on the shelf above the counter. I couldn't get to that. Surrounded by, those felt glow-in-the-dark heavy metal posters.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
Black light posters.
Bet your mom loved that.
Yeah, well, she wouldn't buy them for me.
Yeah.
It was a fight to get Dungeons & Dragons books.
So of all the D&D books you could get, why the Monster Manual 2?
I mean, I was like 6 or 7 at the time, so I can't state for sure, but I think it was the only one that they had that had monster in the title, and monsters are awesome.
And that's all you need to know.
Exactly. And look at the cover. It's Jeff Easley. It's that giant. Well, it's an ogre, I guess, or maybe a hill giant. Whatever he is, he looks awesome. The warm tones of the forest. That poor little fighter dude who's going to get smeared.
Oh, he's about to get smeared. It's going to be fighter jelly.
Yeah.
That's artisanal.
Yeah.
Artisanal jelly. It's made of fighter. So now Jeff Easley did the cover art, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
I did a little research about this book, and the interior is a heavy hitter lineup. You have Jim Holloway, who did Land Behind the Magic Mirror and Dungeon Land.
He also did the artwork for the Paranoia RPG.
Really?
Yeah, that's his best work. He's really good at sci-fi and humor.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You also have Dave Sutherland, who did the cover of the original Dungeon Master Guide.
Indeed.
Which is pretty cool. You've got Larry Elmore, who's best known for Dragonlance.
Yep.
And then you got a fourth guy named Harry Quinn. Just so you know, when you Google Harry Quinn, it automatically thinks you mean Harley Quinn. So after about an hour, I gave up. I wasn't really able to find a bunch of information on Harry Quinn.
I don't know the name. I couldn't tell you what monsters he illustrated. Sadly.
And that's the thing. In the book, you really don't have a good indication other than if you recognize their art style.
Yeah, which is an annoying thing about the old school books.
Right, which is something that, for me who does love fantasy art, it's a thing where, I'm going through the book and I want to try to find the artist so I could go and find more of their work. Instead, I find myself reverse engineering it where I find something later that they made that they're actually getting credit for.
Yeah.
And then going backwards and then be like, oh my God, he did the work in the Monster Manual too.
Yeah. A lot of stuff was done work for hire, so they didn't get credit, or credit was an afterthought. Companies like Chaosium were always good about that. They always had a really good credits list. So I know all those guys, but it took a long time to figure out who did what in early D&D stuff.
Now, this was the third monster book TSR made.
Yeah, it
correct?
was 1983. It's the first monster book with an orange spine. I think it's one of the first orange spine books.
Right, because the original Monster Manual, which came out in
77. 77?
Yeah,
Yes.
it came out in 77. It went through various different versions of printing before they actually landed in the early 80s on the orange spine.
Yep.
So you're going to see different colors in the original Monster Manual, ranging from the very bright blue and muted reds that you see on the very first one to where the sky kind of gets darker and darker as they go through the publication, which for me, I thought that was pretty cool because, to me, in D&D, whenever the sun goes down, that's where the trouble really begins. Because I never really understand. It's like, wow, there's a unicorn on the cover of the original Monster Manual, and it's so bright and blue skied.
Yeah.
Who fights during the daytime?
Well, who fights unicorns, too?
Right. So the Monster Manual 2 was initially... the Fiend Folio was supposed to be the second Monster Manual, except they branded it as the Fiend Folio and released it in the UK.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say most, but a good portion of the monsters in the Fiend Folio were done for a column in Games Workshop's magazine called Fiend Factory. So they were all British amateur-made monsters, and a lot of people didn't like the Fiend Folio at the time.
See, it's one of my favorite monster books of all time.
Same here. Russ Nicholson's art is just fantastic.
Well, that's what I love about the old 80s Dungeons and Dragons style art is that a lot of it is like, I just remember being a kid in the 80s and looking at like the local Burnout in the math class and, what he was doodling. Yeah. Next to the giant penises on all his notebooks, there was always like a dragon or a monster, or now that I know what a grell is, a grell. And a lot of this old art, it's great, but it's very like scratchy. It's very almost dangerous feeling. It's not as polished as, say, the art that came out in later editions, like even second edition Dungeons and Dragons and up, where tell me, I'm gonna riff on this for a second.
Sure.
Second edition D&D.
Yeah.
Do you remember the handbook to the Marvel Universe?
Oh yeah, I love those.
Right. You remember how like every issue they had the different shots of the characters standing in a certain way? Then you saw the side profile.
That weird sort of what do you call them? Model sheet way.
Yeah, exactly. So Monster Manual 2 really hit home for me because I used to collect the Handbook of the Marvel Universe when I was a kid. So a lot of those, a lot of the artwork, it just reminded me so much of it because it's so flat. In a way, where you have the artwork in Monster Manual 1, 2, Fiend Folio, where even scratchy, even, almost sketchy, it just feels so much more full and so much more robust in the way they created the monsters in those books versus, say, Monster Manual 2. And then once you hit 3, 5, and above, it's just such beautiful artwork. Such really, that's where you start getting into, like, Ditter Lizzie. Yeah. Which is one of my favorites.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of these guys end up going on to drawing and painting magic cards, which I thought was very funny, because they went from one kind of dragon medium to the next.
That's true.
And also have just when you think about how many cards are in a set of Magic the Gathering that continues to evolve over the course of the years and years and years versus the amount of monsters that you get in a Monster Manual, that's a high work rate.
Yeah, it's a lot of art.
So do you have any other thoughts about the Monster Manual 2?
A couple things. Just riffing on what we're riffing on. Fiend Folio was the only original first edition book that didn't get reprinted with an orange cover.
Correct.
That's how much people didn't like it. It was also really badly reviewed in Dragon Magazine, which I think is hilarious. Russ Nicholson's artwork in Fiend Folio, though, is some of the best and scariest D&D artwork. He designed the Grell and the Githyanki and the Eye of Fear and Flame, and just like really gory, like kind of like death metal style. Right. Oh God, I love it. It's so dangerous.
And that's what a lot of these things are. A lot of these things are very, very like it's dangerous looking. Like if my mom, when I didn't start playing D&D until I was 25. I'm almost 40 now. If my mom had seen any of this shit when I was a kid, oh man, she would have strung me up. She would have like taken me right down to church to Father Fitzgerald and would have been like, Johnny, you need to start praying right now for your soul. She wouldn't even let me like watch MTV when I was a kid. So I could only imagine the horror that would exist in my mother's mind if she had ever seen any of the Russ Nichols work from back in the day.
But I mean, my mom was nervous about it. That's why it took so hard. Like the whole Satanic Panic thing was going on, and
now that was in its. It hit the fever pitch around this time, correct? Satanic Panic.
I feel like the 60 Minutes TV special, which was an hour, I don't think it was a full 60 minutes, but they did this sort of really yellow journalism expose on the connections between Satanism and D&D. I think that was in 1985.
Right. So this is right before. This is the runway that led up to the Satanic Panic.
Yeah, and I mean, there's demons and devils in Monster Manual. Pazuzu from The Exorcist is in it, and
nice.
And he's great. He's so cool. But I can see why people might have been a little sketched out about that. But it's just a game,
or so they thought.
Well, I have a building on my property devoted to this game, so maybe it's a little bit more than just a game.
Maybe just a little bit more. Now, speaking of demons, deities, and demigods, that was another book that came out around the same time before this Monster Manual came out, which was another expansion of the different kind of monsters and creatures you could get. Which was awesome because I'd always heard whispers and rumblings that there was a book where you could get Elric, and then Cthulhu, and a bunch of other names I'm not going to try to pronounce because I'm going to slaughter them. And that was part of the chase. That was part of the fun back then. I'd imagine is that these fantasy books, these great works that you'd been reading, you actually could figure out how to make a playable character and play that character in your book, in your D&D group. What's funny is that I look at Elric, not really overpowered.
No,
which makes me take a second because I'm looking at him and I read the books. And I think to myself, I thought he'd be more powerful, but then I really think that that's the way it's written.
Yeah.
Versus how Elric actually would be.
Yeah.
Elric would probably get his ass kicked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all the sword, man.
It's all the sword.
That's the point.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that, the rumors about the Cthulhu mythos being in Deities and Demigods, it's like not before the internet, you had to work really hard to find this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Now that I have the internet, I can not only find this stuff, I can get it relatively cheap, but I can find so much more stuff like that I never knew existed. I didn't know that Chaosium put out box sets really until like 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, that's the bright side of the internet, is that there are collectors and people who are like us, who are passionate about what they're into. They're passionate about games. They're passionate about, their hobbies. So they're willing to commit the time to track all this stuff down and put it up on the internet, like you did with Vintage RPG.
Yeah. I will say, though, that nothing beats finding it in a store randomly.
Oh, no.
Getting packages, I love mail, but like when you go to a bookstore and it's just like, oh, there's a Dungeon Master's Guide. I already own that, but I think I might buy it anyway.
Right. So what my favorite part about the old D&D books is finding them with someone else's name already written in them.
Oh, yeah.
Which it bums me out in a way, because I'd hate to think that someone who loved it that much that they'd want to put their name in it, mostly so their shitty friends wouldn't steal it from them. Would ever pass it up, it wouldn't end up in the hands of their kids or someone who really appreciate it. That said, I really appreciate it, so whenever I find one with Billy or Johnny or Desmond written on the inside, I found one like that once.
Really?
It was interesting. It was mostly you just get BJ badly scrawled inside, and again a drawing of a penis, but it's cool. It means that it was lived and it was used. Someone actually, you scroll through the books, and as much as for a collector, you want to find something that is near mint and package. I like seeing all the pencil marks and the erasing marks and the pen marks and the little notes on how people were going to kill their friends in the 80s.
And when it looks like it's been used and flipped through and played.
Because
I really love that.
we do. I mean, for the people listening at home, I started... as much as you started when you were young, when you bought the Monster Manual, I started around 3.5.
Yeah, we dragged you in.
You dragged me in. It was probably the best thing you guys ever did for me, because I passionately love Dungeons and Dragons.
I carry a tremendous guilt that we introduced you to D&D and it was 3.5. Ugh.
You know what? I'm still standing.
No, that's true, but it was a much harder race than it should have been.
Other people who were with us at the time aren't. I will say this though about going back and buying these old books. I don't collect very many things. And this is said as a boy who is sitting in the clubhouse surrounded by all this great vintage board games, books, and artwork. I don't collect a lot of stuff. I do collect vintage, first edition and some second edition old books, because I just love them. I love the way they feel. I love the way they smell. I can't look at them without my glasses because the print is so small. But there is something that's really special about the orange binding on the side and the old artwork. What's your favorite monster in the Monster Manual 2?
Definitely the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, it's so freaking weird. Which I'm pretty sure made its first appearance in the Expedition Barrier Peak module.
Right.
Which is S3, maybe? S4? Something like that. And basically the idea is that a spaceship crashes on Greyhawk, and it creates all these weird mutations, one of which is the wolf in sheep's clothing, which looks like, at first glance, it looks like a tree stump with a bunny on top. And you're just like, oh, it's a cute little bunny. Maybe I'm hungry. I'm going to try and shoot the bunny or go pet the bunny. Whatever you do with the bunny, there's actually hidden tentacles, and it's like a man-eating plant thing that has evolved this camouflage bunny on top of it. I think it's just the most wonderfully ridiculous of that period. Nothing screams 1983 Dungeons and Dragons like the wolf in sheep's clothing,
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, I love the Haunt. The Haunt from the Monster Manual 2. It just reminds me of an old Scooby-Doo monster.
Oh, it's so creepy.
And I want it to be like, you're going to get it, you're going to rip the head mask off, and you're going to find out it's old man Jenkins, and he's going to get me and my little dog. But it's not. It's a haunt, and it will destroy you.
Yeah, and it's D&D. Yeah, there's no old man Jenkins.
You know what I did appreciate about the Monster Manual 2 that you did not get in the original Monster Manual? The original Monster Manual, it just hits the ground running in whatever printing that you have of it. The copy that I have here, I'm actually looking at the original Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, orange spine with the dragon and the Pegasus. Am I saying that right? Pegasus? Pegasi. See? Oh, man. Terrible at stuff. And this is just solely Gary Gygax with some artists. It gives you some explanation notes, and then it goes through and it just jumps right into the creatures.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Monster Manual 2 is interesting because Monster Manual 2, a little bit thicker, right?
Yep,
so
definitely.
After the table of contents, it also gives you things like random encounter tables. It gives you an index. And the index is cool because in the index, it tells you the different kinds of terrain. So if you're in cold saltwater depths, Common creatures are sharks and whales. Uncommon, you have elf aquatic. You've got giant sea turtles. Very rare creatures, you got, well, an otter.
That doesn't seem very rare.
It's apparently an otter is very rare. You got a water weird. Others. If you're in tropical freshwater, if you're in temperate saltwater surfaces. So I just think that's such a cool way to give you almost, as a DM, a little extra flavor text for when you're building your adventures.
I agree. I love the charts. I love it when they break down stuff like that into usable and sort of evocative.
Cold Wilderness Hills is one of my favorites because uncommon, you have a bandit because it's gold. Rare, you have a werebear, a lycanthrope, and then things like a warg up on there as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the kind of thing, for me starting out as a DM, I looked into these books because it was, also how do I get a random encounter, dungeon monsters by level, so I wouldn't be just trying to kill everybody.
Yeah.
This is the kind
of scale it.
You have a scale. So this is the kind of thing that, you are going to get in your monster manuals now. And also some of the stuff in here is a little flavorful, like things you'd find in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So I really do appreciate how as the game evolved and the medium evolved, they found fun ways to kind of hit people to what they needed to do to have more fun playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly.
So Stu, what are you excited about?
What am I excited about?
Yeah.
I ordered, and now I don't know. I'm a very organized guy.
You are.
I like things in their place.
Right.
I think that when you use something, you should put it back where it belongs.
Gotcha.
Everything has the right place it should go. And one of the worst things about board games is the fact that it's a box with lots of little pieces, and there's no order in that.
Right.
And it makes me a little crazy. So this company called Broken Token makes board game organizers. They're laser cut, and they snap together. I have a couple of them, and I have a couple more coming. And I am very excited to finally get all of my board games organized.
So that's where you got those things from?
Yes, the Broken Token.
Okay, because there was a game that we played recently where I was like, wow, I knew this was an expensive game, but look at all these like neat little compartments it comes with.
I think that was Scythe.
That was Scythe, yeah.
Yeah, those didn't come with it.
Oh, wow, okay.
I paid extra.
Yeah. I just imagine like you kickstarted it or something, and like we'll give you these organizers. You're right, because that is the thing. I think that if there was more organization with games, people would lose less parts.
You lose less parts. You also you lose less time. It takes less time to set up and less time to break down.
Right.
Well, maybe not less time to break down.
Well, I mean, a game takes as long as it takes to break down, but I see what you mean, though.
Yeah.
Well, wow, really? Because the system that they had in play for Scythe was just magnificent.
Oh, it's crazy.
Everything was so neatly it fits in the box again.
Well, they actually made a bigger box to put the organizer. And there's an official Scythe box that is a bigger box than the box that the game originally comes in.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right?
Well, look, yes, it is crazy to a degree. That said, I don't think it is that crazy because, like, for me, one of the problems I always had with games that I bought, like, for instance, I got the Wrath of a Chardalon.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't fit everything back in the box the right way. It was
never.
Not meant to go back. It was like meant to come out and never go back in the box.
Because your players are probably going to break everythly and storm out.
Because it was a
really
very
hard.
difficult game.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the Scythe came in a large box, and there's 2 expansions, and if you get the Broken Token Thinger organizer, I think it'll fit in the original box, but they also sell a bigger box that...
So the box I'm looking at on your shelf right now is the bigger box.
Yes, that is not the retail box.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and it's a gigantic box.
That's a big box.
It really is. It's beautiful art, too.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited about organizing, because that's what I'm excited about. What are you excited about, Emma?
So, I've been going to Gen Con for the last 3 years, right? Yep. So one of my favorite movies of all time is Big Trouble in Little China. And
how could it not be?
The movie just it's the best thing that's ever been put to film. Don't quote me on that because next week I'll probably say something else. That said, Big Trouble in Little China is awesome. The year before, I bought a legendary card game for Big Trouble in Little China, and it was awesome. That said, it didn't really satisfy my hunger for a really true Big Trouble in Little China game. So Everything Epic Games, who just wrapped up their Kickstarter for Rambo last year was
Rambo. Oh God,
Rambo the board game. Yeah, it's exactly what you'd imagine it is. So they were wrapping up their Kickstarter for Big Trouble in Little China, which I did a demo. I played a demo of at Gen Con, and I bought it on the spot. I bought the deluxe box. Now, Stu, this box is almost as big as that site's box.
Really?
And it has so many miniatures. It has a double-sided map that will take up probably about 2 feet of your table. It is super fun, and it was supposed to be delivered in November, and then it got pushed to Q1 of this year. And then it got pushed to Q2 of this year.
Ain't that the way?
And so I finally got an email the other day, and it said, your game has been shipped.
No, it's a lie.
Well, they said many of you emailed us and sent us a message on Facebook, and we've done our best to respond to everybody. Our hope is now to give you the latest news on the game, and it's been shipped in the freight from Germany, where we were not originally expecting delays, and now it's made it to the North America area.
It's on the ship?
But it's on the ship.
Oh, my God.
So the North American status is MSC Reps, which is a shipping company, on the phone this morning. They could not confirm definitely on the departure date out of Freeport in the Bahamas, but suggested it could be the 1st of June. So if that occurs, it could be in Jacksonville approximately the 4th or 5th of June, and then we'll take it from there. So it is coming. It's the closest it's ever been to my house.
And getting closer, apparently.
And getting closer. I can't wait to play this game. I can't wait to bring the game to the clubhouse and let everyone try it, because this game is awesome. So the real kicker is they were finally able to obtain a direct way to track the USA shipment, and they gave you a link so you can track the boat that it's on with the master BOL number, and you can click to find the container that it's in to see the updates, where it shows a transshipment from Panama as of like 2-3 days ago.
I hope there's no storms between now and whenever it gets to land.
Oh, I'm realistically, I've been telling myself for months, I'm like, I'm never getting this game.
This is so ridiculous. How can they not know where the thing is?
Well, it's funny because they did this thing where like, oh, the games are finally been shipped. It's because it's coming from Germany. If you kickstarted it in the UK or in Europe, you're gonna get it first, obviously.
Yeah.
And then, within 3 weeks, it's going to be making its way to the United States. And they did an unboxing and, gameplay trailers, getting people excited for it. And I'm just still waiting.
I love the fact that, like, it's been shipped. And you think, like, oh, it's in the mail. It's like my mailman has it. But no, it's on a ship.
It's literally on a ship. So,
Jesus.
So that's what I'm excited about. Next episode, I will let everyone know if I did, in fact, finally get the game. Hopefully, I'll have good news for you out there.
Oh, my God. Well, Godspeed, Big Trouble in Little China Ship.
Good luck. So this was the very first episode of Vintage RPG Podcast. Thank you for listening in. Stu, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG. You can also find me on Tumblr at Vintage RPG. And my day job is on winnable.com, where we talk about all sorts of nerdy stuff. So you should check that out, too.
Very cool. You can find me on Twitter at Handbreaker, where I pretty much exclusively talk about Dungeons & Dragons, pro wrestling, and retweet the Bullet Club. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm at Waxpack Cinema, where I'm showing you the movie Goonies, one trading card at a time. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.